Hello and welcome to the Law Club podcast. My name is Nate Dunn and I'm on the board of the Charles Houston Bar Association. And today we are so happy to have with us Chambord Benton-Hayes, who's the immediate past president of the Black Women Lawyers of Northern California. She's also the founder and principal of Benton Employment Law, where she represents employees who seek to protect their rights in the workplace. She also trains executives, managers, doctors, attorneys, and employees on ADA compliance, anti-harassment and discrimination, and other law and employment issues. She is a proud graduate of UC Hastings College of Law and the University of San Francisco. Chambord, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Nate, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And so you went to college and law school in San Francisco. Are you originally from the Bay Area?
Yes, I'm a San Francisco native. I like to call myself a unicorn because there's not too many of us out here, but yeah, and then had most of my education in San Francisco.
Wow. So is most of your family still in San Francisco?
They're spread out. I wish they were still in San Francisco, but we kind of all migrated more to the East Bay.
Yeah. What first inspired you to pursue a career in the law?
Well, I was very young, and something happened that kind of planted a seed that blossomed into a purpose. I had read, well, when I was younger, I read a lot. I was very, very shy. And so books were my reprieve. And I had read a book, A Journey to Justice. And it's a book written by Johnny Cochran, the famous attorney that has since passed away. It was right after the O.J. Simpson trial. So it was kind of the height of his fame. And I thought the book was great. My aunt, who helped raise me, she had me do a book report on the book. And then she found out Johnny Cochran was going to be in Oakland at Jack London Square. So she took me to go meet him. I was actually first in line. And I was so nervous and I wasn't good at public speaking. So when I got in front of him, I just started rattling off these questions, and I'm about 11, so he's laughing and enjoying the moment. And he spent a lot of time talking to me. And kind of what I took away from it, or what he said to me that always resonated, was, you're going to be an excellent litigator one day. And I had no idea what a litigator was. I was just excited. It was Johnny Cochran being kind to me.
Yeah.
And he wrote in my book too, the book I had read, which I thought was great. And afterwards I looked it up, what a litigator was compared to, I knew an attorney, but not a litigator. And it was kind of, like I said, that moment that planted a seed that blossomed to a purpose. I was like, oh, I would love to be a litigator. Like, I would love to do something like this. So that I started planning for law school thereafter. My same aunt that I did the book report with helped me, prepare for law school. So yeah, and I knew I was going to law school after that. Even in college, I prepared to go to law school. So it worked out, and I ended up a litigator. So
yeah. Did you have any?
Right.
Did you have any attorneys in your family?
No, actually, most of my family's in the medical field.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that aunt, even though she wasn't an attorney, she still helped you get ready and helped keep you motivated.
Yeah, I think she liked that it gave me something to do and to focus on. And yeah, she was just an amazing woman. So she kind of just pushed me along. So
awesome. And then you served as an extern for the Honorable Terry Jackson, who's now Justice Jackson. Can you describe how that experience was? And Justice Jackson has broken down so many barriers on her own. And can you just describe some of the lessons that you learned working with her?
Sure. Well, first, Justice Jackson is amazing. I saw her speak at Hastings, UC Hastings, and I immediately, wanted to get to know her because she was so powerful, so profound, and I just was inspired by her. And this was when she was in criminal court, A50 Bryant, and so I didn't get her a chance to talk to her after she spoke, but I took her trial advocacy class, and she was really tough.
Yeah.
She's probably one of the toughest teachers I had, because she expects a lot from you and she pushes you hard. And I think that's so important, because you have to be comfortable. You know, if you're going to be a litigator, you're going to be in court, you have to be comfortable with someone challenging you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I took her class, and then I did well in that. And then she invited me to work with her, and it was great. Most of my time, oh, actually, something fun. Nichelle Holmes, I worked with Nichelle Holmes
Absolutely.
at the same time, who's the former Charles Houston Bar Association president. Yeah, we worked for Judge Jackson. We had one really big case, and that took about 4 or 5 months. And then we had a bunch of different criminal cases that we heard regularly, but it was great. She's amazing. You know, she's, like you said, she's broken down so many barriers. She's just a trailblazer. So you can't help but be inspired by her and her journey. And she just has such a commanding presence.
And fast forward to the present, now you have an employment law firm, and that's your practice area. What led you to employment law, and why does employment law fit you so well?
Well, that's a good question. I like to call it sexy law, meaning that the cases are just kind of interesting. Like every day it's something new in employment cases. You know, I always feel like I'm not going to get shocked anymore. Like, you know, I've seen it all. And after 11 years, I still see new stuff every day. I never underestimate how comfortable people feel at work, or things they do at work, or, you know, illegal things they think are okay. So
Yeah.
it's just,
Well, and also, I mean, people's jobs is so important to them. A lot of people define, I mean, most people, when they introduce themselves, they say, what do they do? Where do they work? I mean, it's such a central part of so many people's lives. And when you have somebody at work, or something is happening at work that is not right, it grinds you down. It affects all areas of your life. And so it's really important that when something goes wrong at work, that people have a strong advocate for them. And one of the impressions that I get, I don't do a lot of employment law, but I feel like in employment law cases, it's really such a great opportunity for people who are well represented by good counsel. It's important because sometimes there's a lot of gray area, sometimes there's not. But you know, you might not be dealing with like one incident. You might be dealing with death by 1,000 cuts, or discrimination by 1,000 little microaggressions, or emails and things like that. And how do you put together all these small little events into one case? So can you kind of describe how your experiences has been with you know, building a case from a bunch of small little things but they ultimately come together to be, you know, a series of events which really affects your clients negatively?
absolutely. I mean, I think that's a great way that you described it. I could tell you have some experience with it. How I look at cases kind of holistically, and I've been to trial. I do consider myself a trial attorney. So I kind of look at cases backwards. So when I take them in, one of the first things I look at is, how will this case present to a jury? How will this individual, or if I'm representing multiple plaintiffs, how will they present to a jury? What facts do I need from the company, you know, to prove the law? Like, what are the requirements? So I'm looking at that. I'm thinking about what discovery I have to do. And then while you're doing that, while you're looking at it kind of segmented, is I'm going to have to tell a story. This is a cast of characters. And, you know, if this case does go to trial, I'm just going to tell a story. And interesting enough, what I've learned from doing trials is that the person with the most compelling and believable story usually wins. That's who the jury usually votes for. Like, there's some other things you're not going to anticipate, but usually it's so much about the storytelling. We're a society where people are inundated with images and facts and salacious information. So they need a story, they need to be entertained. And if you do a good job, they'll know your theme at the end. Like if you pull the jury, they'll know exactly what your theme was. So that's kind of how I handle it.
When you have a client who comes to you and maybe they're still at their job versus they've already left their job, if somebody comes to you and they're still at their job but they're experiencing this, how is that a different case from, say, they've already had it, they've already left, or they've already been fired? How does it make it different when the person is coming to you and they say, things are really bad, but I don't want to lose my job, or I'm afraid of how coming forward with this is going to affect me at my job? How have you seen that play out for your clients?
Yeah, I'm really careful with that one because honestly, I think that in certain circumstances, depending on the facts, it may not be advantageous for them to have an attorney. It actually might backfire, like they might get retaliated against or fired, even though it's illegal, totally illegal. I just don't know that it benefits them. So I'm often hesitant to take cases where the person is still employed.
Okay.
Because it also puts the employer on high alert if I jump in. There's always exceptions to the rule depending on if the person, can take that risk. Meaning, for example, I represent a lot of executives. They can probably afford to lose their job a little bit more easily, depending, their life circumstances. It's not going to be, as dire sometimes when they lose their job versus someone who's supporting their whole family and the family is dependent on them. I probably wouldn't intervene. But my goal is just to help them understand maybe the law and then maybe the procedures and to know how to use the complaint process. Because you have usually an internal HR, unless it's a small company. And then you have external agencies like the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So it's just basically, I think, giving them tools so they can advocate for themselves. And if they need me at some point in the future, I'm able to do so, I try to help.
That's really good advice. And after you spent your time after you graduated law school working for other people in law firms and gaining experience at some really top-notch firms, and at a certain point in your career, you decided to go off and start your own firm. When did you know that the timing was right for you to start your firm?
Well, a bunch of different things happened. The pandemic happened, so we got to start working from home more, and you didn't have to go into the office as much. George Floyd happened, like this moment in history where I think, I felt like I was a captive audience in watching so much racial turmoil go on in the world and, dealing with the issue of injustice and, then there was the storming of the Capitol. It just was so much in this moment. I mean, we're all still in it. I may be endemic, but we're still in all these things. So I kind of, my conscience was revived, and I thought about, what I've learned over my career, and I really wanted to give a voice to people that could use my skill set.
Absolutely.
For the past 10 years, I've been on the corporate side, which I love. It's nothing wrong with the corporate side. I'm an advocate for big firms. The firm I worked at was amazing. I could have easily stayed there and been very happy and had a great career, but I felt my skill set was very specific, and I had trial training and I could help people that needed advocacy. So yeah, I thought it was a good time. I also noticed that not a lot of people had experience representing executives. And something nice in California is you'll see a lot of minority executives. And so I was like, oh, okay, it doesn't have to be minority executives, but I was like, they'd like maybe some minority representation. That was another area where it's kind of niche, and I had niche experience. So
absolutely.
Yeah, those are kind of the two main areas, kind of a call to justice, as well as, using my skill set for a very specific demographic. So,
and with workplace discrimination cases, we tend to think of negative in-person interactions that happened around the office. Has remote work changed the types of cases that you're seeing?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, maybe you would think initially that harassment or discrimination might be obsolete in kind of a work from home environment. But, if somebody wants to violate the company policies, they find a way to do it, and they just find different creative ways to do it. I'm seeing things where people harass someone on Slack or social media or any kind of the work forums that people use to connect with others. A lot of people have like internal chats that still can use email. So yeah, I don't know that impacted much. Phone calls, I've had harassment on phone calls. So yeah, it just, the cases keep coming. The pandemic didn't change people's behavior. Like there's going to be people at work that don't follow the policies. So
you mentioned Slack and obviously email. Are you shocked sometimes the fact of what people will say in writing and what people like the fact that people are oblivious to how their Slack messages or their emails come across when they're talking to coworkers?
yeah, a lot of it I think is not as overt. I've seen like a lot of memes and a lot of things that are just questionable. It's interesting as our society has developed. It's still a lot of microaggressions. It's never like, most people are a little more sophisticated than to say something like, I don't like Mexicans. They're not going to say that, but they'll do some meme that's highly inflammatory, and they'll send that to the person or to a group of people. So that's kind of how they get around it. And then they say, oh, it was a joke, or oh, it was in gist, or oh, they knew about it, so it was ha. And oftentimes it's ha until someone gets mad, and then they're like, I wasn't comfortable with that. So.
And what about I'm sure we've all had bosses, present company excluded, who they can't seem to get tone right in emails, or they'll send a request or something like that, or can you do this or whatever, but the email etiquette is just, it's so harsh, it's so condescending. Like what crosses the line in terms of an employer talking to an employer, a subordinate superior role, of just bad email etiquette from a tone standpoint?
So I mean, that's a great question. And we've all had that boss. You're like, you get their emails and maybe like cringe, or you're just like, oh, it makes you mad or makes you not want to open their emails. The interesting thing about that is the a-hole boss that no one likes, that's not illegal. As long as they treat everyone, equally, as long as like they're mean to everybody. That's not illegal. There's a few cases that kind of dispute, what crosses the line, but really it's not illegal. So in those cases, I think it's really on the impetus of the employer, maybe to get that manager some training. It's also on the employees to find a way to either have conversations with that difficult boss to say, you're not comfortable with the tone of the emails or the conversations or the Zooms. Or report it to HR and say, hey, we're not comfortable with this. And then the company has to kind of train the manager or change something. But unfortunately, a lot of times those individuals are really high performers in companies. So that's not the first thing they think to do.
Yeah.
Kind of just allow it and sweep it under the rug until, something egregious happens.
Yeah. And, kind of on that same vein, or on the flip side, almost, it's, we've just seen what's been described as the great resignations, where so many employees have other opportunities and things like that. And it's almost like the balance of power has shifted. Have things kind of changed from the standpoint that managers and employers have to kind of soften their approach with employees, because if they don't, and obviously sometimes this comes with just increasing salaries and things like that, but if they don't change their tone, employees will just simply leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see that unfold, because we're all dealing with it. We all have mobility. Usually, we can find another job. And particularly in California, it's a pretty robust market in most industries right now. But it just depends. It kind of is the goal of the employer. If the employer is trying to retain top talent, then, they are being aware of that. They're giving people days off to have work-life balance or spend time with their family or kids, or they're understanding, that some people want to work remote most days and only want to come in the office a couple of days. So you see a lot of companies doing that really well. And then you see companies that are just churning and burning, and it's always a revolving door. So, I don't know how that is a sustainable business model, but I think in some cases it is certain businesses models. They understand that most people aren't going to last maybe more than a year or two, if that long. And so they're okay with it.
When a prospective client comes to you, or when somebody asks you about problems that they're having with their boss or with their employer, how do you help them, figure out whether their situation is just an inconvenience or a personality thing that they need, not necessarily tolerate, but they need to realize that this maybe isn't the best boss for you, but it's not discrimination. It's not something actionable versus your boss has crossed the line. This is actually, you actually have legal recourse against your employer.
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm direct with people. Like I'm kind of your first judge, meaning that I've been on the corporate side. I speak the corporate language. I know how the C-suite meets and determines, big cases when they pay them out or cases they fight. So I look at each case with that lens. So I may be a little bit more difficult than some plaintiffs' attorneys. I'm not as high volume as some people. I kind of cherry pick. And then I try to have that honest discussion with the client and be empathetic, respectful, understand that this is difficult for them. But sometimes it's just not a good fit. Like you just have to choose, nothing illegal happened, or it's microaggression, so it's not really covered on the law, and you don't have enough of the microaggressions to show that there was discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. So you just kind of have to accept, a lawsuit may not make sense, but maybe you should explore other options. Because if you can find another job while you're there, or start making your life transition, you might want to do that. So sometimes I have to have those conversations with people. And if they don't agree with me, I'll give them referrals to other attorneys so that they can have different discussions with them. So it's just having them understand their rights.
When clients come to you, can you describe the difference between when you've got one client saying, my boss is doing these things and I have this case, versus a group of clients come to you that have all experienced the same thing? Does it make it more difficult or easier to have, let's say, a group of 5 plaintiffs versus one plaintiff?
Oh yeah, I love multi-plaintiff cases because I think, it tells a different story. It's just not one person saying I was mistreated. I actually have a case where I have 3 plaintiffs against the school district. And they're all saying they experience racial discrimination, and they have very specific examples. And there's some similarities between kind of what they experience, even though they're experiencing it on different dates, but with the same supervisor. So it kind of shows that there might be something there. So I love multi-plaintiff cases. On the defense side, I think the largest one I've ever seen is like a class action, but it wasn't like a wage and hour class action. It was like a sexual harassment class action. It was like 200 plaintiffs. And I'm telling you, to be on the defense side and to sift through that, to deal with all the complaints, to navigate that. And it was during the height of the Me Too movement. That was quite a challenge. So I know that more plaintiffs presents a challenge for defense attorneys because I've been in their shoes. You have to take it serious in a little bit of a different way when you have multiple people saying similar or the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's harder to discredit a group of people than it is one single person. I want to switch gears a little bit because we've had a lot of big Supreme Court news in the past couple of weeks. But I want to start with a positive. Recently, Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed as the first African-American woman to be on the Supreme Court, and she will take the bench once once a spot opens up for her. I want to ask you what that meant to you to see Ketanji Brown Jackson be confirmed.
I was just overwhelmed with joy. That's an amazing historical moment. We saw our first vice president, Kamala Harris, and we see Justice Jackson. I'm gonna call her Justice already. I know Breyer hasn't stepped down, but she's a justice to me. She's been confirmed. And it was just a transformative moment. I didn't know that in, my lifetime that I would see that because it's taken so long. So, and I loved how she handled the confirmation hearings. She dealt with those difficult days with grace and humility. And I just think she was just representative of what we want to see Supreme Court justice be. And I think her record speaks for herself. Her record speaks for itself. She has an amazing career and is well suited to be on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. Have you talked to Judge Brenda Harvin Forte recently?
I have. Yes, she's very elated too.
Oh, because I've just listened to so many programs with Judge Harvin Forte about and you can just tell whenever she talks about this issue, it's just this has almost been her life's work to make sure that we have more representation on the bench. And so I just know that her cup overflowed with this news.
She's so amazing. She does so much work. She's tireless. And I'm always impressed by her and learning from her. And I've worked with her a few times on various issues, either with, one of the organizations I've worked with her, whether it be cable or Black women lawyers. And she's phenomenal. I think we actually did a statement together about Justice Jackson. So, and yes, her passion overflowed. I could feel it on the page. So
yeah, for sure.
It made me excited to, experience her joy as well, because I think it was authentic. Those moments are authentic. Nobody's pretending it's real, and it was time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time.
And on the flip side, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is joining a court that, if the draft opinion holds, is poised to overturn Roe v. Wade, and who knows what's next after that. I think this was something that we all feared once the numbers stacked up against us. But to see this actually come down in the way it did, there's so many checks and balances in our system. But what happens when you've got one branch of government that the Supreme Court with a 6-3 conservative majority? It's like there's almost no way to fix it unless judges get replaced. And so what is your overall level of concern about what might transpire at the Supreme Court over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I was very concerned when I saw the leaked opinion. After 50 years, I didn't think we'd still be arguing about federal protections to abortion. At least we're in a state in California where we have a governor that's very active and is, on top of things and gonna enshrine it in our, law in California. So I feel protected there. But no, it's concerning, and I'm gonna be excited when Justice Jackson takes a seat, but I'm still worried. It's just odd to be having these conversations in this day and time, to be concerned about women's right to choose, and talking about the baby's gestational age. And I read the opinion. I'm familiar with Dobbs versus Jackson, so it's just an interesting moment in history. I'm still kind of trying to process it and just be active and understanding what else could be changed, going forward. So
yeah, I think we all many of us share a similar concern. It's one of those things where it's like we were always moving in incrementally, like I recall like being in law school, and almost your first couple of days in constitutional law, they start back at the beginning. But then you go back and you just read some of these cases over the course of our history, and it's just so it was just so sad, some of the places that we were, and you see this progress made over decades and decades and decades, and then all of a sudden we're seeing that progress kind of go backwards. And I think it underscores the responsibility that all of us as attorneys have in continuing to fight and continuing to represent folks and make sure that we try to build a good a better justice system, and we advocate for our clients and speak up for what's right. And I've heard justice been described as a pendulum, and sometimes it swings one way, but then it'll swing back the other way. And so, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like what recently we heard about Roe v. Wade being overturned, we got to hold that L for a little bit, but it's gonna motivate so many people. It's gonna motivate so many people to vote. It's gonna motivate so many people to go to law school. It's gonna motivate so many people to not be on the sidelines and to get into the game. And so I hope that in the long term, this was something temporary, which really springs us to action and helps get us to where we need to get. But in the meantime, it's we got to accept it. But it doesn't mean that we have to. It doesn't mean that that things are going to stop.
I mean, I think that's a great observation, and I hope it is a call to action. I just kind of was overwhelmed by it that we're still dealing with that issue. But I think your insight is astute. I think that's true. Sometimes it takes things you didn't anticipate to happen to, remind people what they have to value and what they should be fighting for. So.
And changing gears, you're the immediate past president of the Black Women Lawyers of Northern California. Can you describe the importance of that organization in your legal career and how that's helped you?
Absolutely. The first time I went to a Black Women Lawyers Association of Northern California meeting, I think I was in law school at Hastings, and they had some event in like a hotel suite. And I just sat there and listened. I didn't have anything to contribute at that point, but I was just amazed by the caliber of women and the different kind of industries they worked in and their careers. And they were so kind and welcoming. And at that point, I think I was president of BALSA, but I just hadn't sat in too many rooms like that. And Absolutely. So I was just really inspired at that moment. I never thought from that moment that I'd be president. Like, that wasn't even on the radar. I just liked being in the room. And then I was just impressed by it. And so I kept going. I went for a number of years. And then eventually I joined the board. And once I joined the board, I saw what kind of impact they were making. I saw the importance of the events they were putting on, how it was helping our community. And I knew this is something eventually I wanted to help lead. and further the vision to be really, it's about being a safe place for African-American women to talk about their needs, talk about their success, talk about what they want to see changed in the law. So, and I think few organizations I'm gonna say it like this, have such a powerful, dynamic group of women. So I'm super proud of the organization. Right now, they're under amazing leadership of Suzette Barnes. She's the current president. And I know she's gonna do great things. And she has an amazing board under her. The vice president is amazing, Allie Gibbons. So I'm just super proud of the organization. And if I could play any small part to help support that organization, which I hope I did, I'm extremely proud of it.
Absolutely. I have my own sort of a similar sentiment towards CHBA because, when I started out as a new lawyer, I think it was probably the first 6 or 7 years that I practiced law. I was working in small law firms. I was usually the only person of color there. And it was really lonely. I didn't have anybody who was really looking out for me. I was a tire on the car that they were trying to, just burn out so then they could replace me with somebody else who was, not burnt out. And it wasn't until I joined an organization like Charles Houston, and I assume Black Women Lawyers of Northern California, it's very similar. It's where you join this cohort of folks who are in a similar are similarly situated, who are going through similar experiences. And, all of a sudden I have this amazing group of, I consider friends and family that are going through what I'm going through. So many of us, we might be the first attorney in our family, or we might, whatever it is, we just don't have a lot of people that we can go to and share our experiences and just get that energy pointed right back at us. And having an organization like Black Women Lawyers of Northern California, or CHBA, where you can go and just see people who not only look like you but are going through the same thing, it just means so much. And I would just encourage all young lawyers or lawyers at any point in their career to look out for affinity bar organizations or what's going on locally, because it makes the practice of law so much better and so much fulfilling, because you're not just doing a job, you're part of a community.
It's so true, Nate. Like, you just hit the nail on the head. And I want young attorneys to understand they don't have to come and contribute. They can just sit and listen. Like, if you're shy or, you can contribute. If you want to get involved, please do, because it's important to get involved if you want to. But if you don't have to, just being around the groups of people, making friends, listening to jokes, telling jokes, just going to barbecues, all that community, I think is healthy, and we need it so desperately, because at some point, I think most people, for whatever reason, are going to feel isolated in this, particularly being a minority. You're going to feel kind of, I sit in so many rooms. I've just been in so many spaces where I was the only, or they always thought I was the court reporter, or I was never thought of as the attorney. I was always led to be something else. These are unfortunately common experiences that people regularly have. So, you do need a support network.
Chambord, you've been so generous with your time. I just got a quick last couple of questions, and then I'll let you go. What if you can look back on your legal career so far, what has been the best decision that you've made so far in your legal career?
It's been a willingness to fail, because that's when I've grown the most. So the law attracts a lot of like type A, I've always succeeded, I'm always the best personalities. And I think at certain points, sometimes you can get through most of your life and you're the best, everybody tells you that. But at a certain point, you're going to lose a case, you're going to have something that's very difficult in your life. And usually from those moments, those difficulties, you learn the most. And those are kind of what you remember. If you succeed all the time, that's wonderful. And I enjoy success. But the failures is where I've grown the most, whether it's in a case or, in life, or lost a job. Losing a job is very traumatic. So, I deal with that all the time. So it gives me a greater empathy for what people are going through. But sometimes, your failures are the most important part of your story. And sometimes people are afraid of that. But I tell people the failures are part of it, and don't worry about them. Just respond to them and make a choice on what your next step is.
Well, I think that's a great place to finish. Chambord Benton-Hayes, thank you so much for making time today. Where can people find you if they've listened to this and maybe they've got an employment law issue, or they're looking, maybe they know someone who needs to talk to an attorney? Sure.
You can find me on my website, which is Benton Employment Law. And if you call into my office, I have a great intake clerk. They'll talk to you, and then you'll eventually get to me. You can go, I have chat on my website, so you can chat to someone live, or you can also there's on my website, you can send me a note. So I'm readily accessible, LinkedIn too, on bentonemploymentlaw.com.
Great. Well, Chambord Benton-Hayes, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Nate. You've done a great job. This is really amazing platform, and thank you for your insightful questions.